Hello, Infinite Masters. Welcome to the Infinite Mastery Podcast, where we bring you high-performing, world-class leaders and experts that will help you master your self-esteem so you can master your life. My name is Richard Kuo, and I'm super excited to be your host for this week's episode. And this week we have Jake Ballentine, who is a personal friend of mine and also a youth inspirational speaker that has spoken to over 250,000 students around the world in the past 5 years, as well as he's the author for the book, Your Number One Goal, and he's also the host of the podcast, Focus on the Good. I'm really excited to bring you this episode. This week we are going to talk about how do you really bring about that happiness in your life? How do you take all those quote unquote negative things that happen in your life and turn them into positives and really focus on the opportunities and see the struggles as beautiful things that really will enhance your life and make a huge difference for the person that you are today. So without further ado, I'm super excited to bring on my friend Jake Ballentine, and let's get started right now. What's going on, everyone? How's it going? This is Richard Kuo. I'm here with Jake Ballentine. He is a youth motivational speaker who has spoken to over 250,000 students. He is also the author of Your Number One Goal, the book, and also he's a podcaster of Focus on the Good. And today I just want to bring on Jake because he's such an incredible person. He's a friend of mine, and that's what I have. Jake, can you fill us in a little bit about yourself? Anything that I missed in regards to you?
Let's see. What else did you miss? I've been married over 7 years, expecting our first child. That's the most important thing to me right now. That's the biggest thing on my mind right now. So yeah, and other things will probably come up as we talk more.
Awesome. Congratulations. I love that. I love it every single time someone says they talk about family, because oftentimes introductions they talk a lot about like your positions, what you've accomplished and things like that. And I think that father thing, family being so important is so great to hear.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like career, it's good. That's a good thing. That's a great thing. But like, in my opinion, your personal relationships, and for me specifically my family, that matters more than anything else. Anything that has to do with my career, that matters so much more than that.
That's powerful. We're going to have to talk a lot more about that. I did not expect the conversation to go this way, and I still don't have any idea exactly where we're going to go with this. I'm going to leave it open-ended. But this podcast, the Infinite Mastery Podcast, is really about sharing your story and being able to just share a powerful story of someone who's gone through a lot with their life and come out on the other side. And one thing is I want to be able to have the opportunity to dive deep with you so people can really see the deeper layers and the things that you've had gone through and the emotions and everything that you've gone through in order to get to where you are today. So my question to you is, do we have permission to dive deep today?
Absolutely. I'm an open book.
All right. Super excited. So Jake, tell us a little bit more about what it was like for you growing up. Where did you live? What was your family situation with mom and dad, your siblings, and what did your life look like? What was your biggest struggle growing up?
Okay, so there was quite a few questions in that. So I'll first start with my childhood, where I grew up. So I grew up in South Pasadena, California. That is actually its own city. We just have not very creative founding fathers. It's just south of Pasadena, so they called it South Pasadena. And I'm the youngest of 4 kids, and both parents. I really am so lucky with my family. A lot of people, their struggles come from their family. That's not me. My family, I am so blessed to come from such a great family. And I grew up in a home with both my parents, but also with my grandparents, which was such a blessing for me. It's kind of one of those things where sometimes things happen and they feel like they're happening to you, and I'm sure that that's how my dad felt when he lost a job and he moved in with his in-laws, and I'm sure that wasn't something that he wanted to do at 40 years old or whatever. I think he was 36 or something when that happened, and I'm sure that wasn't something he wanted. I'm sure it felt like something that was happening to him, but now I can see it, and I can say I'm so grateful for that because of that, I have an incredible relationship with my grandma, who's still alive, and my grandfather, who had, and we'll talk a little more about that later, but my grandpa had such an impact on my life, and I don't think that impact would have been there had he not lost a job and had to do something he probably didn't want to do. So I had a fantastic childhood. My childhood, put it this way, the worst day of my childhood was the day that Mike Piazza was traded from the Dodgers. That was the worst day of my childhood. And if I can say that, then it was pretty good. Things were great.
Wow.
That's not entirely true. I mean, there certainly were other struggles, and I don't know if you want me to go into that right now or if you want me to pause for a moment.
Pause for just a second. Now, I got to ask this question. You said your childhood was pretty good. And I'm curious to know, when you say your childhood was pretty good, are you saying that from a responsible perspective of who you are today? Or did you genuinely feel like when you were a kid, life was great?
Okay, so looking back now, I can say everything was absolutely incredible. I'm so lucky to have the family that I had and the childhood that I had. Now, if you want to go into some other things, not everything was perfect. I certainly had my issues, and I think the biggest issue for me, you talk a lot about self-esteem. In fact, this is the very thing that I talk about when I go to high schools and middle schools, is talking about self-esteem and self-image and understanding that you are valuable. And I didn't see myself like that. I didn't see myself as valuable. I didn't see myself as intelligent because from the time I was, pretty young, I was considered learning disabled. I was in the special education program, and not just elementary school, middle school, high school. I mean, I could barely read at all. It's not like I read like a little bit below the reading level of everyone else. I mean, I would just stutter and stumble my way through everything. I'd finish a page and have no clue what I read. And being in that special education program, it's funny you say that, seeing it as a responsible adult. I can look back now and I can say, those people were there to help me, and I'm so grateful for them. And I understand now that the school system is designed as a one-size-fits-all, even though there's all these people on this side and all these people on this side. I think there's probably a third of people where it actually fits, and there's 2/3 of people where it doesn't, whether they're beyond or below or whatever. And I don't even want to call it below, because I don't think this stuff has anything to do with intelligence, looking back on it now. But at the time, I sure thought it did. I sure thought that when I was in those classes. And, you tend to make jokes. Like, at least that's what I do. I make jokes as a coping mechanism for different things. And me and a couple of my friends who were in the special ed department, we'd go to this class every day. They'd help us with their homework. We'd go there during tests, and they'd read the test, because I didn't read a book cover to cover till I was 18. It's a miracle that I graduated high school. Bam! Is that you too?
Same here.
Really? Okay, cool.
Yeah, man.
That's awesome. I didn't, because I didn't understand it. I didn't, whatever. That's how it was. But so I had people reading to me for all those things, and so me and my friends in that class, we would refer to the room as the retard room, which is a word that I never say now. I think that word is that's not a part of my vocabulary, period. But that's what we called it, because I'm truthfully looking back, it's because we needed to make some kind of joke about it, because we all felt bad that we weren't where the other kids were. We weren't. I thought it meant I was stupid. I thought it meant that I was dumb, and also I listened to the wrong people, because everyone has the right people, everyone has the wrong people, and I'm not unique to say that people made fun of me because of a challenge that I had. I think that's everybody growing up. But I would hear that. I'd hear, Jake, you're so stupid, or you can't even read, or make jokes about it. And what I started doing, once again, as a coping mechanism, was I started making the jokes first, where I became the butt of the joke, where I was the one saying it. But I figured if I said the joke, it's not going to hurt as bad. If I'm the one saying it, it's not going to hurt as bad. And so that was probably the biggest issue for me growing up. And truthfully, that completely shaped my life. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if it wasn't for that, for the way, something that was a challenge. I learned how to overcome that challenge. And because of that, it completely shaped me.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. The first thing I noticed when you started speaking was you're talking about how life was great for you. It was amazing and you had a great childhood. And I had to ask that question about, like, are you seeing it from a responsible adult or back then? Because I think as children, once upon a time, you had a perspective of slow self-esteem. You had a lot of challenges. People were picking on you, and you had to create this coping mechanism. Now, it almost seems like had I not mentioned anything, you would have looked at your childhood and been like, oh, like my childhood was pretty good. And that's kind of your default, right?
Totally.
And I think this is like something that should be said at the very end of the interview when we kind of recap. But what I want to highlight, what I'm hearing you say is like, essentially, we have the power to choose our perspective. And when you look at your childhood, you see it as good now. As for back then, you probably wouldn't have said it was good because you were getting picked on and all that stuff.
Totally. And I don't want to make it sound like I was like, picked on every day or anything. I'm just saying I chose to listen to the wrong people. And you say that, it's almost difficult for me to look at things from the lens that I was at, because I am so focused on finding the positive in everything. I mean, look at that right there. And
I couldn't help but look behind you and focus on the good.
I mean, that's why I like, seriously, this concept, this idea has changed my life, because I used to look at my life as a victim. I used to look at my life in that kind of way. And I decided to shift my thinking and that idea. Oprah says, whatever's happening to you is happening for you. And really, I have a hard time, when you say go deep, I think like part of you is saying like, well, let's talk about the nitty gritty and the hard things and the difficult. I have a hard time even talking about them in a negative way. And if you notice, when I start talking about them, I immediately go, yeah, but this helped me in this way and this helped me in this way. I'm very happy with who I am right now. And so therefore, I would not change a thing about the past. Because if I didn't have the struggle with school, I wouldn't be a speaker right now. If I didn't have the struggle with school, I probably wouldn't have written a book, because part of writing a book was I wanted to be able to say, hey, I used to not be able to read. I barely graduated from high school. I was basically kicked out of college my first try. I was put on academic probation for my first semester. I couldn't come back for an entire year. I left college and said, screw that. Hey, if you don't want me to be there, I don't want to be there anyway. And, later on I went back and I learned how to go, you know what? I'm going to overcome this challenge. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it happen. And I spent every day in the tutoring room. I spent every day there doing everything that I could to get better and better and better. But now I can say, look, like, yeah, I used to be that kid who couldn't read, but I just wrote a freaking book, I mean, like, that's pretty cool to go from a kid who, hey, I used to be made fun of because I couldn't read, and now I'm an author, I mean, that's... So I don't see those things as negative. I can say, yes, I felt that way at the time. And it was difficult. And I did feel inferior. And I felt like it's not fair. It's not fair that it was easy for them. And honestly, there was a time where I tried really hard in school. And I would try really hard and I would get maybe a C+ at my hardest working. And everyone else, it seemed like that was easy for them. They were... they're getting A's, no problem. And I work my hardest and maybe get a C+. And then I'd just be like, you know what, whatever, I'm not going to work at all. And I'd get a C. So it's like, why try? What was the motivation? What was the incentive for me to try? And so I just said, forget about it. And I can look back now and I can say, well, the reason why I didn't do well in school is because I listened to my excuses. I had excuses, but everyone has excuses. Everyone has things that they have to overcome. You have things. Everyone who's in this office building, everyone who's watching this, we all have stuff, but I think that we listen to our own lies. And, for the last 4 years, I've been going around schools, talking to them about, a lot of times I'm hired to talk about bullying prevention, and which is kind of interesting because I don't really talk about bullying. I talk about what we should be doing. I talk about respect, and I talk about treating people with kindness and following the golden rule. And more importantly, I talk about lifting yourself and lifting others. And I think that if you have a positive self-efficacy, you are not going to put other people down. It's just that simple. People put others down because they feel inferior. People put others down because they feel like either they don't belong or they feel like they're insignificant. One of those two things. And so that's what I try to do. But now, so I talk a lot about not listening to those wrong people. That's a big thing. And really the central point of my whole presentation to youth is you have two people. You have the right people and the wrong people, and it's your choice to listen to the right people, forget about the wrong people, and then be the right person for somebody else. But lately, I've been thinking that you saying the lies to yourself are far more damaging than what other people say to you. And the power that you have to yourself, that is so much bigger than what anyone can say. And for me, I say that, I started listening to those wrong people and it started to affect me. That was the beginning of it. But it was much worse when I started making the jokes about myself, when I started putting myself down before anyone else could. That was much worse. I did it as a defense mechanism, but when I did that, now I was saying those things and they meant something to me and I believed those things. And that's far more damaging. So,
wow. So for people who are putting themselves down, who are telling themselves those lies, how do people identify what are lies and what are truths?
Well, first of all, I have a different definition of truth than most people. I think a lot of people think of truth as facts. I don't think facts and truth are the same thing, because if you say a fact with the intention of harming someone or harming yourself, I don't think it's truth, because I think truth is only a positive thing. Truth is a positive word. Truth cannot be negative. And so if you're saying a truth for the purpose of putting someone else down or putting yourself down or saying, see, this is the way it is. I suck at this. I'm a terrible person. I'm whatever it is that you beat yourself up about. I'm fat. I'm ugly. I'm stupid. I'm bad at this. I don't do this. I miss that. If you're doing it for the purpose of punishing yourself and beating yourself up, whether it's a fact or not, it's not truth. If you're 100 pounds overweight and every day you're saying, I'm fat, look at you, you're so fat and you look so terrible. It doesn't matter if you're actually that's not truth. You're trying to beat yourself up, and that's not going to help yourself. So first of all, I would say, and I've done this with several people that I've worked with, and it's done wonders for them. First of all, just take, we all have phones on us all the time, and just make a little tally on your note, on your, whatever, your note or whatever, the notepad on your phone. Make a tally on there. Just every time you think or say in your head a negative thought about yourself. Don't think about truth or true or false. That's not the issue. If it is a negative statement about yourself, whether it's factual or not, if it's intended to say I'm bad at something, just tally that up. And I think that the awareness of how often it happens will shock you. And once you first realize that, then once you have that realization and that awareness, you start to realize I'm really doing a lot of damage to myself. And I had a choir teacher growing up. He said a lot of things that really affected me, and maybe I'll tell you more about it a little bit later in this. But one of the things that he said to me was, there's enough people in this world that are going to want to put you down. So don't be one of them. Don't be one of them. And so just figure that out. Just start tallying up how often you're saying negative things about you. And I do think that there are some people who are their pendulum's too far on the other side, like they're oblivious, like they think that they're perfect when they're not. But I think that's much more rare. I think there's far more people on the other side that just beat themselves up, and never tell them anything good. And so I think a part of it is that self-awareness. Are you the kind of person who is how are you out of touch with reality? We're all out of touch with reality in some way. But are you out of touch with reality in the way of I'm so perfect and that's just the way it is, which I think is pretty dang rare. Even when people portray that, they're usually portraying, like, prideful people are usually the most insecure people. And they're saying, like, so I play guitar, and I know that when somebody tells you that they're great at guitar, they're probably not. You know, if that's the first thing, oh, I'm great at this, like, I'm fantastic. Okay, cool, whatever. Like, you're probably not. Like, not trying to be offensive, or even if you are, maybe you are, but there's certainly some insecurities going on there because you're saying, look at me, I'm great. And so I think you have to be aware of where you're at on that pendulum. And most of us fall on the side where we don't give ourselves the credit that we deserve. And so just start out by awareness. So figure out, how many times a day am I doing this? And I think that alone, I don't want to say a bunch of things, because when you say a bunch of things, nobody does them. So do that. Just do that. Just become aware. And from that point, you're going to go further and further and further, and you're going to start doing it less. Just being aware, you'll do it less.
That's a powerful knowledge bomb. You summarized exactly all my thoughts and everything into what you just said. Focus on one thing, and I agree with you. Self-awareness is huge.
Yeah.
I think that's one identifier that kind of separates people who are very successful from people who are not as successful.
Totally.
What would you say, along that lines, what would you say would be the most important trait someone can develop personally and regarding self-esteem?
Say the question one more time.
What is the number one trait that you believe someone could develop to improve themselves personally and around self-esteem? Or maybe even that might be the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, because it's hard for me to answer that because, well, I'll have two things to say about that. First of all, it's hard for me to say that because the best way to improve yourself, the number one asset somebody can have, is to believe that they can do something and to actually have that belief, because there's some great benefits in ignorance. It's good to not know everything. Walt Disney he's one of my heroes. Here, I keep pulling things off the wall. Hold on.
I love this.
Bam. So,
what do you have there?
This is a picture of Walt Disney that I keep right next to me. He's on my wall because Walt Disney is one of my heroes. And the thing about Walt Disney is he actually wasn't that good of an animator. You know, I mean, he was fired from his job as an animator from a newspaper in Kansas City, and they told him that he had no talent and no creative ideas and no original ideas. And some would say, yeah, he didn't have original ideas. All of his movies were based off of old fairy tales and different things like that. And that's besides the point. The point is he was not the best. He was not the best animator, and he fired himself pretty soon into the Disney journey because he wanted to get people better than him. And he was not as educated as some of the people around him. And the Walt Disney Company invented things in terms of animation that had never been done. And a lot of his animators said that a part of the reason why he was able to do that as a leader of the team was because he did not know what was impossible. He'd have an idea and he'd ask people to do it. And they'd say, we can't do that. And he'd be like, well, figure it out. And they would. That's the thing. Like, they would figure it out. And so sometimes a belief that you can do something without the knowledge of how, sometimes that's even an asset. So first and foremost, just actually the self-esteem to say, yes, I can. And I think that belief in yourself and self-esteem are kind of two different things, because I think self-esteem has a lot more to do with your value as a person. How do I value myself as a human being? Where belief in yourself is more about, I can do that. I think there's people who have belief in themselves that might not have high self-esteem. So those are two different things. But so first, the belief in yourself that you can do things, that you can do hard things. And the way to develop that is that competence brings confidence. And so if you, like, it's amazing. Learn something new. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. Once you add knowledge, it doesn't matter what the knowledge is. If you master something, all of a sudden you're like, wow, I could do that. Like, I did that. I I am a smart person. I went from nothing to being able to do it. And if you're, I talk a lot about health and fitness because that's been a big journey of mine over the last 2 years. But like, so let's say you're out of shape, you want to lose weight, you want to get more fit, whatever. I don't care what it is. Go do a workout. And I don't care if you do a terrible. I'm saying I don't care if you're not, you're not killing it in the gym. In fact, you shouldn't do that at the beginning. You have to start small and you have to move forward in reasonable steps. But like, you go and you do a workout. All of a sudden you feel better about it. You want to try a new workout. You want to learn a new sport. Well, you learn it and you do it. As you get better and better at it, your confidence is going to grow. Confidence on the stage as a performer, I get all the time because I play music in my assemblies, and every assembly I do, I get kids coming up to me and say, "Oh, I play guitar and I sing, but I can't play in front of people," and which is a part of my story. I talk about up there. I use this is an analogy for believing in yourself, and that's when I learned how to play guitar. I could play fine by myself. This is the 14-year-old version of myself, but I couldn't play in front of people. And there's nothing different about playing alone and being in front of people, but I couldn't do it because I was worried about what other people thought about me. But it took me a long time to do that. And for all people, and this is kind of what I say there, but for all people, it all comes down to we don't live up to our potential because we're so worried about what other people think about us. So I was worried about that, and I didn't live up to my potential. But it wasn't until, first of all, I said, I don't care what other people think about me. I'm just going to do my best. That got me to get on stage. But then I was still nervous, but I was like, I'm just ignoring it, like almost pretending like I'm alone. But then as you become more competent in it, the more often you do it, the more competent you come, the more confident you become. So with all these kids that come up to me and talk to me about that, I just say, my advice for you is get stage time. Go and perform. When a new speaker talks to me, go and speak. Like, I don't care if you're first. It's good to bomb sometimes because you have experiences. You don't learn that much from, like, so you're a speaker. When it goes well and everything went great, what did you learn from that? I mean, nothing. You didn't. I mean, you did a good job and that feels good. And I of course I want that every time. But when it doesn't go as well, I learned, like, there hasn't been a new bad thing that's gone wrong in probably 2 years, for me as a speaker at schools. Because there's things, one time it was like over 100 degrees in this auditorium that I was speaking at because it was in August in California and the air conditioner wasn't working. And so that was rough. The crowd was not in, they were just hot. And then, there's a time where the speaker system went out, and there's a time where there's some punk kid in the back who's whatever. But the point is the more you do it, the more confident you are. And now when something like that happens, I know exactly what to do because I've done it before. I've dealt with it before. And maybe that first time it just bombs. And then you go afterwards, well, why did that happen? So I'm going to try something different. Next time it happens, I'm going to try something different. And now at least when that next time happens, I don't know if it's going to work, but I know it didn't work. And so I can try it. And then it works. And then all of a sudden now I have competence. And I'm going to have confidence because now I know that the next time that situation comes up, I got it. I got it handled. I know exactly what to do.
So you talk about confidence comes from competence. So developing those skills. Now, do you believe that confidence leads to increasing our self-esteem, or do you think self-esteem is built a different way?
They're all interconnected. They're all, none of them are in a vacuum. But this is interesting. This is really interesting because I said how they're two different things, but I've never said that before. That was something I just said right now. But, thinking about it, I do really believe that confidence and self-esteem are two different things. And I think that you got to like who you are. You have to like yourself. And I think that sometimes that comes from being honest with yourself. And when I say honest, I mean, what's the word? Being authentic. Because when you're trying to be phony or trying to be fake, nobody likes a phony person. Nobody likes them. But you can't trick yourself. you can't trick yourself. It's not possible. You can't trick yourself. So if you are phony subconsciously, by default, you are not going to like yourself. And so you got to like who you are. And you got to be like, no, I like who I am. I'm not perfect. I know that I have my flaws, but overall, if I were to meet Jake Ballentine, I'd want to hang out with him. I like the guy, I spend tons of time with him. And so I think that first and foremost, being authentic is the number one thing. And then the other thing is being aware enough to where if there's something that you don't like about yourself, I'm not saying the way that you look, I'm not saying like personality traits that are at the core of who you are, but I'm saying like if you don't like the fact that you are not reliable, then work on it, change it. And so I think kind of the same thing. I think that that comes from competence as well. If there's something, self-improvement and self-development, that's why, I've done so much work on myself over the last 5 years, from doing Jack Canfield courses, Tony Robbins courses, Brendon Burchard courses, Lewis, on and on and on and on. Everyone you could think of, I have studied and read their work and gone to conferences and, all those kind of things, listen to their audios, watch their videos. And I think that if there's something that you don't like about yourself, learn how to improve it. If it's something that's about you, well, then that's something you got to deal with, and you just got to learn to like who you are and realize that you are valuable, and that the things that make you different, you don't want to be someone else. Like, why would you want to be someone else when you are the original? You are a unique individual. Jackie Chan was asked what it was like to be the next Bruce Lee. He says, I've never wanted to be the next Bruce Lee. I wanted to be the one and only Jackie Chan. Why do you want to be someone else? So you have to, if there's something you want to change, go change it. But if it's who you are, you need to just understand and realize that the things that make you different are the things that make you powerful. You are powerful. You are an amazing being. And the power that each person has is so far beyond what we even understand. When you talk to anyone who is successful, you might look like, I noticed that you like last week or something, you posted a picture with Lewis Howes. I guess you met him at a conference, which that's awesome. I love his work, absolutely fantastic. But like, the dude's like 34 years old, and like I'm not taking away anything from him because he is amazing. But I guarantee, I've heard him say things like this. If you were to ask him, he'd say, like, I'm just a dude. Like, I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy who learned some things and started doing them. I don't remember what my point was, but onto that, I'm just saying, I remember. You don't know what your power is. He is a guy who's reached millions of people, but he's just a guy. Yes, he's a charismatic guy. He's an intelligent person, and he's very good with people. People like him, and that's something that he has going for him. But he's learned to develop himself, and he's learned to develop his skills. But the point is he's just a guy. And I'm just a guy, and you're just a guy. And I see myself in that way, where I go like, oh, man, I could never be at this level. But then I know that there's people who look at me and go, I could never be. If only I could be at that level. I was talking to a friend today, and we were talking about, 5 years ago, we could see where we're at now. We would think that we're crazy, that we wanted more, that we wanted to improve ourselves more. Because this sounds nuts, but I have literally met my lifetime achievement goals from 5 years ago. I am literally living what now you could say that's really cool that you got there, or you could say like, dude, you had some pretty low standards for yourself. But it seemed like not achievable. It was impossible. But I've reached a level to where literally my dream that I thought was impossible. And so you are a powerful being, and I think there's not something you can do about that. You just have to start to understand it. But competence brings that. When you do something anytime you do something that you thought was impossible, immediately you're going to grow.
Wow. How does I was holding on to this question from what you said earlier, and you're talking about how people need to just discover and see that they are powerful beings. and just to know that they are amazing, that they have so much within them. How does someone find themselves and find who they are and why they're even powerful, or are they even powerful?
Wait, you're saying how do they find out if they're powerful? That's a tough question, because you have to. Here's what it is. Don't be afraid to fail. That's the thing. If you're so afraid to fail, you're never going to figure it out. You're gonna fail. It's gonna happen. But you have to try things, and then when they don't work out, you can't beat yourself up about it. And when they do work out, you got to be like, wow, I did something that I thought was impossible. Because if you already thought it was impossible, you do something and it doesn't work out, how did that harm you? It didn't harm you. There's no harm done. But so many people, they think something's impossible, and then they try and do it, and then it doesn't work out, and then they're devastated by it. But it's like, what are you talking about? You didn't think it was going to work out anyway. But point is, don't be afraid to fail. So go try things. Go do things. Do things that other people are afraid to do. I'll be honest. Releasing a book with very personal stories is very intimidating. It's very... I'm going through a lot right now, thinking like, this is my first real step into the personal development space. I've done the podcast for a long time. I've done speaking for a long time. That's been to youth. This is my first time really putting out something that is for an adult audience. And I wonder, am I enough? Is this enough? Is the things in this book, am I qualified to give this kind of advice? And I have to stop myself and say, you know what, Jake? You are valuable, and you have something to say, and you have a powerful story. But it's all come from putting yourself out there, or putting myself out there when maybe I was afraid to do it. How was I credible to start speaking to youth at the beginning? I wasn't. I just started, I decided to do it. I decided I was credible. And so that's the thing. Don't be afraid to fail. Do things. I saw this, it was like a poster on some wall or something, and it said, do something hard every day. And I think that when we do things like that, it's like, who cares if you fail? Like you grow. You weren't there anyway. Failure's like, well, so what? You're in the same situation. Whatever it is, there's some school you want to get into. If you apply for the college and you don't get in, guess what? You're in the same situation you are when you didn't do it. You're still not at Harvard. So that's a thought that I have, is just don't be afraid to fail, and go out there and you'll do things that you are amazed that you were able to do.
What is your number one resource, thought, and action item that you want to give to people watching this right now who are trying to improve their self-esteem? We'll do one at a time. So let's start with your action. What action item do you want to give to people to improve their self-esteem?
Just do something that you didn't think. Like, do something tomorrow. Do something today that is difficult, and do it. Something you think is hard, go out and do it. And when you do that, you're going to grow.
Awesome. How about, what is one thought that you want to leave with people in terms of just people who are struggling with building up their self-esteem?
You're better than you think you are, and you can do so much more than you think you can, period.
And what is one resource that you want to leave with people who want to improve their self-esteem?
If we're talking about resources, I gotta say it. Go out and get Your Number One Goal, my new book. In terms of, I'm not being, salesy, but in terms of a resource from me, I put everything that I have to say in that book, and it's in a step-by-step guide. And I think that achieving things, the book's all about achievement. And in the book, I talk about my story of, I did something that I thought was impossible, and I've lost 60 pounds. I didn't think that was possible. That's really changed me. That's changed me a lot. But when you achieve something, when when you achieve something, you grow so much. And the book gives you a very step-by-step guide to help you to get from where you are now to where you want to be. And I think a lot of people want to achieve things, but they just don't know what to do day in and day out. And so you can get it for free, yournumberonegoal.com.
Right on. Thank you for sharing that. I got to ask one last question around this, and that is, how do people who know they want something, but for some reason their excuses are more than what they want, how do they get that result?
I think it comes back to self-awareness. I think that I don't think that there's anyone that fully okay, actually, let me start over. You don't get the result. If your reason is not stronger than the excuse, you do not get the result. That's all there is to it. This is basic human nature. You're going to do what you want more than you're going to do what you want more often than the thing that you don't want. And it all comes down to that. The reasons and excuses, Tony Robbins talks about pain and pleasure. You're going to go towards the thing that gives you more pleasure than the thing that gives you the pain. Whatever brings you more pleasure and less pain, that's what you're going to go to. And so if saying no to the pizza, I was somewhere 2 nights ago where, I guess it was a couple nights ago, we had a World Series party. My friend ordered a bunch of pizza. I didn't have any of it, but like, that's the thing. It wasn't a sacrifice to me. I did not want it. But if you want it more, like, you're going to do that. And so you have to get to the point to where I think a lot of people don't fully believe this. They go, okay, yeah, but what's the strategy? What's the tip? What's the thing that I can do? There isn't one. Until you want the goal more than you want the excuse, not going to happen.
How do you want the goal more than you want the excuses? Because there's people who say that they want it and they don't take action to it, and they're trying to want it, but they don't know how.
So I understand that. So I do have a little bit of tension there, because you don't try to want something. You want it or you don't. But there is things that you can do to grow. So I can do, when you put this up, let me know, and I'll send out I'll put a PDF available for everyone who's listening. It's of this chart that I've created. It's in the book. Anyway, so it's in the book, but it's a chart where you go reasons on this side, you go excuses on this side. This takes a lot of self-awareness, but you have to so you go with your number one excuse on the left side, and then you put a reason to reach you put your goal on top, and you put a reason on this side. And then you have to say to yourself, is this, you go greater than or less than, depending on which way it is. And you got to go through that until you find one. And you have to be honest with yourself. If you say, looking good this summer, if that's not bigger than the excuse of I travel a lot, then you can't use that. You have to keep working on it. So you have to keep working. Sometimes you have to build those reasons. My father-in-law, he's working on trying to improve his health. And one of the things that he's doing is he's trying to find more reasons. And so he's trying to build those reasons, one of which, I'm all about, I'm Mr. Focus on the good, but at the same time, there is the carrot and the stick, that we sometimes need both. And so for him, one of the things he still has fairly young children. My wife's the second oldest, and they have an 11-year-old too. And so he's seeing her and saying, I want to be there for her 20 years from now. When she's 30, I want to be here for her. And I want to be there for those grandkids. So that's the positive side. But then on the other side, he's, talking to people who have diabetes, and he hates needles. So he's thinking about, like, trying to envision when he looks at junk food. Luckily he doesn't have anything like that yet in terms of like diabetes, but it runs in the family. It's something very likely that will happen one day. So he tries to envision, so what, every time you eat a cookie, you start thinking about, well, this could be a needle going into my stomach. And so what you can do is to build up in your mind. So if that's an easy thing to do, is talking about health and nutrition, because it's so, it's just everyone can relate to it, So like, you have to start associating good with the thing that you should be doing and associating bad with the thing that you shouldn't be doing. So that's what you really need to do.
Alrighty. Thank you. And last thing I want to ask is final thoughts that you want to leave with people watching this right now.
Put me on the spot, man. Putting me on the spot. I would say my final thoughts, I'll leave you with the 3 things that I end every speech with. And what it is these are the 3 things I think every person needs to hear. I used to say these are 3 things that every kid needs to hear. This is every person. We're all just big kids. We really are. Same problems. We're just big kids. So number 1 is that you matter. You are important. You matter. You are valuable. Never forget that. Never be the kind of person that puts yourself down, and surround yourself around the right team, people who care about you, people who love you, people who support you. Number 2, along with that, other people matter. Just like you matter, they matter too. So treat the people in your life like they matter, because they truly do. And then the 3rd thing is that you can do anything that you put your mind to. Whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you are right. So you have to have that belief. And if you don't believe it, it's not going to happen. This isn't one of those things like, that's a good idea. I promise you, the one way to guarantee that your dreams will not come true is if you are not your biggest cheerleader. You have to be on your side. You have to be in your corner. And if you don't believe it, pretend you believe it. Just start. Just start doing the things. Start taking action. Sometimes you go, well, what would I do if I believed? If I believed that I could do this, what would I do? Kind of the same thing with when I started that weight loss journey. I had to change it because I had tried so many things before. I tried and tried and tried and failed and failed and failed. But it wasn't until I started thinking about it from a positive side, and I started thinking, well, if I was at my ideal body weight, if I was at my ideal fitness, how would I live? How would I eat? What would my life look like? And I decided to live like that. And eventually, the way that I was living, my actions and my body met at the same place. Where, I still have a little more to go, in terms of getting to where I really want. But that's the thing. I've met my goal, and now I have a new goal. And that's kind of how it always goes. As soon as you reach a goal, there's a next goal, and there's a next goal. So I started living literally the way I've been on a little bit of a plateau right now. And I think a big part of the reason was I decided to live like I would be at the weight that I'm at right now. Mm-hmm. And so I've literally got there. And then now I need to start living the way I would live at a different level, a different level of fitness. For me, it's not about weight so much. It's about fitness and health. And that's, taking that to the next level. I'm not about losing, I'm about gaining. And, so if you don't believe it, start living like you would if you did. And eventually your beliefs and your mindset will match your actions. They go both ways. Sometimes you have to change the way that you think, and then eventually your actions will get there. But if you can't get that, the other way around is to change your actions, and eventually it will go to the same way. Carl Rogers talks about, he was a psychiatrist from back in a long time ago. I can't remember exactly his years, but he talks about how every person, this is nice, or this is just the way it is. This is human nature. Every person must be congruent with themselves. Mm-hmm. Your beliefs and your actions must be congruent. And if they are not congruent, let's say you believe this and your actions are this, eventually your actions will either go to your beliefs or your beliefs will come down to your actions. One or the other. Let's say you believe smoking is bad, but you can't stop smoking. Eventually, you're going to either stop smoking or you're going to go, it's not that bad. You're going to do that because we all have an innate desire to be congruent. That's why you'll see someone who has different actions than you that you might think are like, how can you think that's okay? But they do, because they want to be congruent within themselves. They don't even think about it as a bad thing. And also, we all have different beliefs and values and things like that. But the point is that different people will eventually meet their beliefs and their actions. So we can use this to our advantage. Your advantage is you want to start believing that you can do something. Start acting as if you did believe. And then eventually, your beliefs will match those actions.
Right on. Thank you so much, man.
You're welcome. Thank you. This was a lot of fun.
Before we head off, I want to let people know where they could get a hold of you. What is the best place to get a hold of you?
I'm pretty active on Facebook. I have a Twitter account. Don't use it that often. I'm on Instagram. But honestly, yournumber1goal.com, best place there. Focusonthegood.com is my podcast. Those two places both have contact information. And I'm very open book. So contact me through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any of those things. Or there's an email on yournumber1goal.com. So get your book and then just ask me whatever. I'm totally an open book.
Alrighty. Well, that's Jake Ballentine, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And again, I'm just going to pitch it out again. Check out yournumber1goal.com to get a free copy of Jake Ballentine's book. And again, thanks so much for being on here and dropping a lot of great knowledge bombs. It's such a powerful mind, and you've definitely put in the work for yourself. So I definitely appreciate that.
Oh, thank you, Richard. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you so much for being here with us for episode number 4 of the Infinite Mastery podcast. For show notes and other links to Jake Ballentine and other related links, check out infinitemastery.org. Also, if you want to connect with us on Facebook, we have a private Facebook group. It is facebook.com/groups/infinite mastery. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.